Howdy, fellow citizens of the digital agora. We're back for episode 17 of Thomas the Trailhound. Thank you for joining me again this week as I share this 52 episode journey along the Appalachian Trail with Old Man and Hound. Let us begin. Downtime in Damascus, Act 2, the long road north. Entering town, Thomas. Towns always felt strange after long stretches of woods. Too many sounds, too many smells, too many people walking like they had somewhere important to be. The pavement came first, that hard, indifferent surface that does not give back anything your paws put into it. My nails clicked where my paws used to whisper. The old man's boots went from soft percussion of trail to something more deliberate, more visible. Damascus arrived the way small towns do, gradually, then all at once. A gas station, a hardware store, with a handwritten sign, a diner with fogged windows and the smell of bacon, grease, that had been doing honest work since before either of us were born. I read the air like a map I'd never been given. Laundry soap, wood smoke, fry oil, wet leaves plastered the sidewalks like they're giving up trying to go anywhere. The particular human smell of people who've been walking hard for days and had finally stopped. The mix of effort and relief that only exists in trail towns. The old man walked slower here, not tired, just adjusting. The way you adjust when the world changes its texture beneath you and you haven't decided whether you trust it. He pulled his hat down slightly, hands in his coat pockets, pack on his back like always. Warm, heavy looking to anyone passing, carrying exactly what he needed and nothing more. Nobody looked at him twice. That was the thing about Damascus. It had seen enough trail-worn travelers that one more old man and his dog barely registered. We were just two more northbounders coming in from the miles. But I watched the people watching him. Or rather, not watching him. And I thought, they have no idea. Thomas, on the surface, most folks saw a worn coat, an old pack with a fringed strap on the left shoulder. A man who looked like he'd lost more than he'd won. A woman outside the hardware store glanced at him the way people glance at something they've already decided not to think about. A boy on a bicycle steered wide without meaning to. A man in a clean truck drove past without so much as a lifted finger from the steering wheel. None of them knew. He had a small cabin. Nobody bothered him at all. He had me He had enough money because he never spent any trying to impress people he didn't like. No mortgage on something bigger than he needed. No payments on something faster than he could use. No debt to a life that never fit him right to begin with. He'd learned early, or maybe the trail had taught him, that the things worth having mostly don't cost what people think they cost. And the things that cost the most are usually the ones that leave you emptiest. He owned time. He owned silence. He owned the freedom to be exactly where he was, walking exactly the direction he'd chosen, carrying exactly what mattered. That's the kind of wealth that doesn't photograph well, doesn't impress anybody at a dinner party, doesn't earn a single approving nod from the man in the clean truck. But I'm a dog, and I know what rich smells like. It smells like a man who isn't afraid of tomorrow. The hostel was everything a trail hostel, Trailtown hostel, is supposed to be, and nothing more. Bunk beds with mismatched blankets, with socks hanging from every available surface, like the world's saddest laundromat. Common room with a long table, mismatched chairs, and a propane stove someone had commandeered for the communal good. 8 people, maybe 10. A young woman with a red bandana, and trekking poles, calluses, making something that smelled aggressively of garlic. A retired couple in matching fleece. The kind of couple that had spent so long together, they moved like one organism, anticipating each other's without looking. Kyle's kid staring at a map with the expression of someone who has recently realized that planning a thru-hike and actually hiking a thru-hike are two different activities entirely. A woman sitting alone at the far end of the table, journal open, pen moving, not looking up. The kind of alone that lonely, the kind that's been chosen and is being used. And at the corner of the table, back to the wall, eating instant potatoes with the focused economy of a man who learned long ago not to waste anything, the Marine. I knew before anyone told me something in that posture, the stillness, the way his eyes moved through the room every few minutes, not anxious, just aware. The habit of knowing exactly wherever exit is. The old man found a bunk, set down his pack, moved to the table. Nobody announced him. Nobody needed to. He sat 2 seats from the Marine without ceremony. Pulled out his camp stove, started heating water, the ordinary ritual of a man who has made the kind of meal in this kind of place enough times that it requires no thought at all. Around the trail table, Nobody asks what you own. They asked where you come from, where you were headed, whether your knees still worked. The young woman with the bandana, trail name Sparrow, was a software engineer from Seattle who hadn't touched a computer in 6 weeks and described it as the best decision she'd ever made and the most terrifying. The retired couple, Biscuit and Gravy, because the trail names always tell you something, had been section hiking for 11 years, one stretch at a time, working toward a completion that was less about finishing and more about having a reason to keep going. The college kid hadn't settled on a trail name yet because none of them felt right. We told you everything you needed to know about where he was in life. The woman at the end of the table was hiking after a divorce. She didn't say it in those words, but Thomas didn't need words. She smelled of someone who had recently set down something enormous and was still adjusting to the absence of the weight. And nobody, not one person at the table, asked anyone else what they did for money, where they lived in the world that existed before the trail, what kind of car was parked in their driveway, or whether there was a driveway at all. On the trail, a man could be a doctor, janitor, a millionaire, or flat broke, and nobody cared. So as long as he carried his own pack and didn't complain too much for the rain. The trail strips away identity down to the truth. What remains when you take away the title, the salary, the address, the curated self that gets presented to the world on ordinary days? Around that table, I watched what remained: hunger, tiredness, humor, kindness, the willingness to pass the salt without being asked. Turns out, that's what matters most anyways. The Marine's name, trail name, was Echo. I never learned why. Some trail names explain themselves, some don't. Suspected his did, but it wasn't the kind of thing you asked. He and the old man didn't speak for a long time. Ate their respective meals, listened to the table's conversation without joining it. Existing in the same silence, the way two rivers can run parallel for a long stretch without merging. Then Echo said, without looking up from his potatoes, "Georgia? Springer. How far you going?" "Far as it takes." "Yeah. That's the only honest answer, isn't it?" Thomas. They went back to eating, but something had shifted in the air between them. The way air shifts when two people recognize something in each other that doesn't require elaboration. No war stories traded, no grief compared, no competition of wounds. Just two men who had earned something heavy for a long time, carried something heavy for a long time, sitting in a warm room eating simple food, or understanding each other with the economy of people who have learned that most words are filler. I put my chin on an old man's boot. He reached down without looking, rested his hands between my ears. Echo watched us with something that wasn't quite a smile, but lived in the same neighborhood. Echo. Good dog. Old man. Best I ever had. Thomas. I met a lot of humans on the trail. The ones who talked the most usually knew the least. The quiet ones carried heavy stories. The loudest man I ever met on the AT spent 40 minutes telling us about his gear. The ounces, the brands, the optimization. And not once mentioned why he was walking. Echo hadn't mentioned anything, which meant everything. The woman at the end of the table hadn't looked up from her journal since we arrived. But twice I caught her watching the old man with an expression I recognized. The expression of someone who was seeing something they didn't expect to find. Not pity, not curiosity. Recognition. Like she'd been carrying something similar and had just realized she wasn't the only one. Humans spend most of their lives trying to look like something, but the trail makes them become something instead. There's a difference. The trail knows the difference. Dogs know the difference. Most people learn it too late, or not at all. We slept well that night. The old man in a bunk that was too short for comfort and exactly right for exhaustion. Me curled at his feet, warmer than I'd been in days. The room breathing around us. 8 strangers in various states of sleep, all carrying their separate weights, all resting in the same temporary shelter. In the morning, Sparrow was gone before first light. The retired couple left a note on the table that said only, biscuits and gravy, mile 500, keep going. The college kid was still staring at his map. Eka was already outside, back on, facing north. He nodded once to old man as we came through the door into the cold morning. The old man nodded back. That was all. If the trail teaches anything, it's this. You never really know who you're sitting beside. The quiet man in the corner might have buried a wife. The loud one might be terrified to go home. The woman in the journal might be writing her way back to herself, one page at a time. The kid with the map might be walking away from something he can't yet name. So the trail gives you a simple rule. Share your food. Listen more than you talk. Don't judge a man by the boots he walks in. Because you don't know how far he's already come. And if a man looks poor to you, if his coat is worn and his pack is fraying, and he doesn't talk too much, look again. Because the richest people often look the poorest. And the poorest are actually the ones trying hardest to look rich. Diogenes of America, Reflection. Alexander the Great once stood over Diogenes of Cynic, the original, the genuine article, lying in the sun outside his barrel, and said, "Ask me anything. I am the most powerful man in the world. Whatever you want, I can give it to you." And Diogenes looked up at the shadow falling over him and said, "Stand out of my sunlight." That is the whole of the Damascus episode, friends. The man in the clean truck has the truck. He has the payments, the insurance, the impression it makes at stoplight. The old man has the sunlight. Now, which of them is richer? Depends entirely on what you think you're here for. The trail doesn't care about your credit score. The mountain doesn't negotiate with your net worth. The river you crossed yesterday didn't ask your name before it let you over. Damascus is a town named for a road to conversion. The original Damascus Road, where a man fell on his horse and got up entirely different. Every trail town is a Damascus, a place where you stop long enough to look at who you were when you arrived and decide who you're going to be when you leave. So eat the simple food, sleep in the short bunk, pass the salt without being asked. And when you walk out that door in the morning, walk like a man who already has everything he needs. Because if you're walking, you already do. That's the end of episode 17, Downtime in Damascus. The next episode will be 18, the Grayson Highlands, where the world opens up and the wild ponies on the balds. Big sky after months of tunnel trail. And a man who has never had a horizon in every direction at once. Thomas the Trailhound, written and performed by Diogenes of America. May the lotus bloom in the void by lamplight. Thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe.